Hello everyone, welcome to China Mosaic. Artificial intelligence beats human beings. A seemingly remote possibility did, in fact, just happen. On the morning of January 28, Google announced it achieved major breakthroughs in artificial intelligence, or AI. Google claimed that it developed a program named AlphaGo, capable of beating professional Go players. The program beats the French-Chinese player, the three-time European champion, Fan Hui, with a landslide 5-0 victory. Neither player made voluntary concessions throughout the game. The incident was sensational. Board games between a computer and a human player are not rare these days. In tic-tac-toe, Halma, and chess, computers have all beat human beings. But for Go, recognized as the most complex board game, computers have never taken the upper hand. Known as Go in the West, the game originated in China and was called Yi, which means rivalry in ancient China. It amounts to the ancestor of all board games. In ancient China, Go is among the 4 artistic techniques, namely musical instrument playing, Go, calligraphy, and painting. The game is more than 4,000 years old. On a seemingly simple board with simple rules, incredible depth and subtlety is hidden amongst the minimalism appearance. Fan Hui said that losing was very hard, but he also gained something in the failure. He said, in China, Go is not just a game, it is also a mirror of life. We see that if you have a problem with your game, maybe you have a problem in your life. Meaning that how a man plays Go reflects how he behaves in the world. Fan also said, the problem is that humans sometimes make huge mistakes. Because we are human. Sometimes we are tired, sometimes we desperately want to win the game. We have this pressure. The program is not like this. It is very strong and stable. Artificial intelligence development seems to be advancing almost daily, but it is after all a product of human wisdom and it cannot replace human beings. In AlphaGo, the artificial intelligence relies on big data from cloud computing, which cannot replace the deposit of the Go spirit accumulated in the past thousands of years. We hope that one day, artificial intelligence can extend further to help resolve urgent social problems, such as medical diagnosis and environment models. But we also hope that the philosophy in Go can be passed on from one generation to another. In March of 2016, AlphaGo will challenge South Korean player Lee Se-tol, who retains the most world's #1 titles. Here at China Mosaic, we are all looking forward to that contest. Thank you for watching.
专业的团队，丰厚的经验。
Welcome to Chicago. Welcome to the Lake Cook Law Group.
投资理财、法律咨询，芝加哥专业律师团队为您的梦想提供最安全的保障。
Let's begin with the global markets. Chinese shares closed higher on Tuesday with the benchmark Shanghai Composite Index up 0.26%. Hong Kong stocks closed up 0.36%. The 225 issued Nikkei stock average dropped 0.18%. The US dollar ended higher against most major currencies on Monday amid rising market expectation for a rate hike later this month. Oil prices traded mixed Monday on rising U.S. production and the possibility for the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries to extend cuts. Gold futures on the COMEX division of the New York Mercantile Exchange fell on Monday as the U.S. dollar strengthened and traders continued to price in a possible Fed rate hike. And here is the latest on the U.S. stocks from our correspondent Sun Meng in New York.
Okay, let's take a look at the stocks market. U.S. stocks ended lower on Monday as the possibility of a March rate hike increased after Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen's speech. Yellen on Friday signaled that an interest rate hike in this month's monetary policy will likely be appropriate if the economy progresses in line with the officials' expectation. The Fed is scheduled to hold its monetary policy meeting on March 14 and 15. Market expectations for March rate hike were around 86% according to the CME Group's Fed Watch tool. On the economic front, U.S. new orders for manufactured goods in January, up 6 of the last 7 months, increased $5.5 billion or 1.2% to $470.2 billion, the Commerce Department reported Monday. This is Sun Meng reporting from New York Stock Exchange.
Thank you, Omeng. Now turning to agriculture futures, here's Jack Scoville in Chicago with the latest.
Hi, been kind of a wild day in the grain markets, especially in the wheat and the soybeans. Soybeans been up and down all day long. Wheat pretty much has held some gains, and the corn has been the weaker market all day long. Soybeans really can't decide whether they want to be good or not. Corn really not responding to a really great export inspections report. Well over 1 million tons once again, and the corn export inspection should continue to remain firm. The wheat market has been a weather market and continued to be a weather market here today. A lot of the buying in Chicago and Kansas City speculation related and tied to the lack of rain in the central and southern Great Plains. All in all, then, a very mixed day here in Chicago, and really we might not have much of a trade direction for any of these markets until we get to the supply-demand reports and the export sales reports on Thursday. Thanks very much. This is Jack Scoville. I'm Vice President of Price Futures Group here on the CME Group floor with some comments for the markets.
Thanks, Jack. And we'll keep you updated on the daily agriculture futures. Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras has appeared upbeat about his country's economy. He believes it has returned to growth despite new figures showing shrinkage.
During a cabinet meeting on Monday, the Prime Minister said that after 7 years of recession, Greece has turned a page and returned to positive growth rates and will meet its bailout goals. His remarks came as the Greek statistics agency Elstat published the revised figures for 2016. The agency revised downwards its estimates on the country's GDP in the fourth quarter of 2016 to minus 1.1% compared with the same period in 2015. On a quarterly basis, Greek GDP fell 1.2% in the fourth quarter of 2016 from the third quarter. According to Monday's data, the country's GDP shrank 0.05% from an initial estimate of 0.3% growth rate. Despite the negative news, government sources insisted that the country can still reach its target for 2.7% growth in 2017. Greek government continued negotiations in Athens with envoys of Greece's international creditors on the terms of the release of the next aid tranche. Agreed in summer of 2015, the second review of Greece's third bailout has been delayed for a year as the two sides have not reached consensus on the next package of austerity and reform measures.
A report from Westminster has warned the way Britain ends free movement of people post-Brexit could have a far-reaching impact on its future trading and migration policies with Europe.
The report said, offering preferential treatment to EU nationals than non-EU nationals in Britain's future immigration regime could increase the likelihood of securing reciprocal preferential treatment for British nationals in the EU. The report adds that it could also improve the prospects achieving Britain's objectives on access to European single market. The report has been published against the background of Prime Minister Theresa May's comments that the public had delivered a message that Brexit must mean control of the number of people who come to Britain from Europe. It has examined possible arrangements and scenarios for migration of EU citizens to Britain after leaving the EU. This includes considering the British citizens who might wish to move to the EU in future.
Italian Prime Minister Paolo Gentiloni's government has unveiled an investment plan worth some 3.9 billion euros to revamp deprived suburban areas.
According to the cabinet, a first 500 million euro tranche was made immediately available to 24 local administrations across the country, which presented just as many restoration projects. Last week, the government's Interministerial Economic Planning Committee allocated a further 800 million euros, while another identical amount would also come from the National Fund for Infrastructure. The municipalities involved included Italy's major cities, Rome, Milan, Turin, Bologna, Florence, and Naples, but also medium-sized and small urban centers.
Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives on Monday unveiled new legislation targeted at repealing parts of the Obamacare healthcare law. This would also end the expansion of the Medicaid program for the poor.
The Republicans' American Health Care Act would axe several key aspects of the reforms, including related subsidies and taxes. It would also end the requirement for individuals to have insurance. Instead, it proposes incentives for people to purchase it on the open market. However, two popular Obamacare elements will be retained by the bill, namely prohibiting health insurers from denying coverage to people with pre-existing conditions and allowing dependents to remain on their parents' plans until the age of 26. Republicans have not provided a cost figure for the new plan or any estimates on how many people might be covered. The legislation must be passed by the House of Representatives and Senate before it goes to Trump for its full implementation.
ExxonMobil Corporation has announced it will invest $20 billion to expand its manufacturing capacity in the U.S. Gulf Coast region. The investment will take place over a 10-year period.
ExxonMobil CEO Darren Woods made the announcement about the company's Growing the Gulf initiative at a CERAWeek week, stating the energy giant is aiming to take advantage of the American energy revolution. He said, as a leading producer of oil and natural gas, the U.S. is now incentivizing domestic manufacturing to invest and grow. Woods detailed the projects will be set up at 11 proposed and existing sites across Texas and Louisiana. The projects will include 11 major chemical, refining, lubricant, and liquefied natural gas initiatives. They are expected to generate thousands of new, high-paying jobs and $20 billion in increased economic activity. Woods added ExxonMobil is making strategic investments in new refining and chemical manufacturing projects in the U.S. Gulf Coast region. It is aiming to expand its manufacturing and export capacity. Investments began in 2013 and are expected to continue through at least 2022. Most of ExxonMobil's planned new chemical capacity investment in the Gulf region is targeted at export markets in Asia and elsewhere.
Now the latest on China's two sessions. The Ministry of Finance has reiterated confidence in controlling debt risks despite some irregularities in local government's financing activities.
Xiao Jie made the remarks at a press conference on the sidelines of the annual parliamentary session. He said China's government debt risks are generally within control. The minister said by the end of last year, combined debt of central and local governments in China stood at 27.33 trillion yuan, or about $3.96 trillion, with the debt to GDP ratio at around 36.7%. He added that there won't be big changes in the ratio this year. Xiao also noted that compared to international levels, the relatively low ratio allows room for the government to further raise debt. Acknowledging the existence of illegal debt-raising practices by some local governments, the minister vowed to take multiple steps to contain debt growth. To rein in rising debt risks, China overhauled the management of government bonds in 2014, streamlining fundraising channels for local authorities while putting a cap on annual bond issues. In November last year, China floated a 4-grade emergency plan for local government debt risks, a precautionary arrangement for fiscal rebalancing on the part of local government.
Li Daokui, a CPPCC member, has said he is optimistic about China's economic growth during the country's transition from export-led growth to a model increasingly driven by consumption.
Li, who is also an economics professor at Tsinghua University, made remarks during an exclusive interview with CNC. He said China's economic growth is U-shaped, meaning once the slowdown bottoms out, growth is likely to rebound.
I'm very optimistic about China's transition in its economic structure and its search for new engine for growth. Fundamentally, China's economy is still a relatively poor economy, with per capita income being about 20% of the US. Meanwhile, fundamentals are still sound, right? High savings rates and high degree of economic openness in terms of investment and trade, and also human capital. Labor force is still increasing in quality. All these things are there, and so I do think it is likely that 2017 would be or will be the bottom of economic growth, the growth rate. So my forecast of GDP growth of 2017 is 6.6%. 6.6%, and next year, 2018, the GDP growth rate is possible to be slightly higher, and then 2019, 2020, the GDP growth will be higher. In other words, we are reaching the bottom of a capital U of GDP growth.
China's economic reform and growth are high on the agenda of the ongoing two sessions that started on March 3rd and 5th, respectively. While seeking stability, China is aiming for better quality in its economic growth and is sparing no effort to strike a balance between medium-high growth and economic restructuring. The economy is shifting toward a growth model driven more by new engines, such as consumer spending, innovation, and services, as policymakers wean the economy off reliance on export and investment. Li said consumption will play a major role in driving growth.
There are three important new engines of growth for the Chinese economy. Number one is consumption. Consumption has been outpacing the overall GDP growth. And for example, last year, consumption grew at the pace of 10%, whereas GDP at nominal rate grew around 7.9% with inflation, right? So the share of private or household consumption in GDP has been increasing. By my calculation, right now it's about 48%. So in the coming few years, this share, the share of private consumption in GDP, will be as high as 50%. So that's the first engine of growth. Second engine of growth is infrastructure investment, broadly defined. The third engine of growth is also important, that is upgrading or improving of China's industry.
Li expects new technology and new capital will be put into the traditional sectors, and then these sectors will become greener and more energy efficient. Meanwhile, Li said China's Belt and Road Initiative will bring benefits to countries along the routes, especially in infrastructure.
And meanwhile, China has surplus production capacity. So with the surplus production capacity, and with China being the largest physical output producer, it is relatively easy for China to help countries along the Belt and Road region to build up their infrastructure. So this is a tangible contribution from China to the rest of the world.
According to the Chinese government work report this year, China has set its GDP growth target at around 6.5% for this year, compared with a target range of 6.5 to 7% last year. In an exclusive interview with CNC, a Japanese economist has said China is on the way to more quality and steady growth, which will benefit the economy of China and the world as well.
They said that they will lower the target rate on 6.5% and trying to be very much steady growth. I think it's quite important one. The Chinese stage is gradually changing right now. For the last 10 years, a very high speed and very high growth. But the next issue is that still higher growth compared with the world. but gradual and steady growth, and trying to be more on the quality side and more the advanced technological side. That is important one. So this is very much turning point for Chinese growth.
The expert said China's presence in the world is becoming larger and larger.
China's presence is becoming bigger and bigger. And now Chinese economic size in terms of GDP is number 2. And the second to number 2. Because still number 1 is the United States. But the gap is narrowing between China and the United States. And Chinese, in terms of the GDP figures, in nominal GDP, is more than 10 trillion yen, well, nearly 11 trillion yen, trillion dollars, sorry. It's a very large enough. And for the last 5 years, every year China's growth in terms of GDP is around $1 trillion. That size is very huge in terms of the countries in the world. So I think it's gradually the presence of China is becoming larger and larger.
China's 2 sessions are currently underway. The meetings are expected to drum up support for the country's next round of reforms. The Japanese expert said the most concerning issues for him as a foreign economist are China's government deficit goal this year, how to adjust excess capacity and keep the soft landing situation.
The government deficit last year is 3%. And so the foreign watchers are watching what the situation will be this year. And they say that the 3% unchanged, but to keep the present, fiscal expansion maintains. So we are quite cautious about how the Chinese will maintain fiscal expansion right now, because for the short period of time, especially this year. And for the future, for the coming, for maybe 2020, in the trend, I think it's how to integrate, how to adjust the excess capacity, excess debt kind of situation, and also trying to keep the very stable soft landing kind of situation. That in the both side is quite important one for the foreign watchers, foreign economists' point of view.
With an annual production of 1.6 million color TVs in Mexico, Chinese TV manufacturer Hisense targeted to explore the American market. Economy Report takes you to have a look at the Chinese enterprise developing abroad.
After a 30-minute drive from the U.S.-Mexico border, the town of Rosarito is home to Chinese electronics plant Hisense. In 2015, the Hisense Group bought the facility in Mexico from Japanese electronics firm Sharp for nearly $24 million. With an annual production of 1.6 million color TVs in Mexico, Hisense's products are mainly sold to the U.S., Mexico, and other countries in Central and South America. Thanks to the North American Free Trade Agreement, also known as NAFTA, the company's products enjoy zero-tariff preferential rates for goods entering the U.S. market.
The US is a large electronics market with annual sales of 30 million units. Hisense Group is seeking to expand in North America. Mexico is an advantageous location since it is close to the US. In addition, Mexico has one of the most thriving economies in Central America and all Latin America. With a population of nearly 600 million, the consumer market in Mexico is also very promising.
After 7 years of expansion and technological upgrades, Hisense's Mexico plant was officially put into operation in January 2016. Now it is one of the most competitive brands in the U.S. color TV market. From installing and placing small parts into LCD screens to packing, the production line at Hisense's factory in Mexico has realized full automatic processing.
Strategically speaking, Hisense has a development plan in the long run, rather than just a processing plant. Apart from improving the brand competitiveness, we also want to contribute to local economic development. If we can work closely with the local supportive firms, Hisense can provide a wider service. It is also helpful to boost the local economy.
The Rosarito plant currently employs 800 people. 15 of them are Chinese and the rest are Mexicans. As the market's expanding, Hisense is expecting to create 500 more job positions. Meanwhile, Hisense is considering to explore new markets in Central and South America to cope with the possible trade policy adjustment posed by Donald Trump administration.
Turning to some company news, France's leading auto manufacturer PSA Group has announced the purchase of Opel and Vauxhall brands from General Motors for $1.38 billion.
The move will see PSA regain its position as one of Europe's largest car manufacturers, second only to Germany's Volkswagen. The number 2 position is currently held by French rival Renault. PSA said it was also buying GM Europe's financial operations for $955 million in a joint venture with bank BNP Paribas, which would take the total value of the deal to $2.12 billion. NBA China and Chinese social media giant Weibo announced on Monday a new multi-year partnership to bring game highlights and original programming to entertain Chinese fans. Through the partnership, Weibo, the Chinese version of Twitter, will become NBA China's official social media platform. It'll deliver content including daily NBA game highlights, photos and statistics, and live-streamed NBA events in China and behind-the-scenes access from regular season games and so on. Weibo and NBA China will also co-produce original NBA-themed programs that will be featured on NBA China's official accounts on Weibo and video-sharing platform Miaopai, and on the Weibo Sports and Weibo Basketball accounts on the 2 platforms. Lei Jun, the board chairman and CEO of Chinese smartphone company Xiaomi, told CNC the company will expand into the overseas markets gradually with no rush. Lei said it takes time and resources to learn about and enter a new market due to different cultural, legal, and business environments, and hasty expansion will cause into many problems.
And that's all for this edition of Economy Report. For more news and highlights, follow us on YouTube. And you can also find out more on our website, en.cncnews.cn. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.